Hey guys, I'm back here with William Seremak, continuing our conversation. William, what day are you on in your hunger strike?
Today is day 76, or no, 75, 75.
75 days without solid food. Um,
Yeah.
how are you feeling?
It's starting to take a real toll on me now. I've had periods of time where I felt bad and then felt more normal for me, but now it's just getting where I feel queasy all the time. I got to watch that I don't pass out. I can't really do any sudden movements, or I will pass out. Um, yeah, so it's hard. It's hard.
It's obviously taking its toll. Okay, well, I want to come back to this part of this discussion, but I think in order to do that, we need to go back several years. I want to take us back to around March or April of 2019 when you received a knock on the door, which is really is that knock is what set so much of this lawfare against you in action. So let's go back to that night. What happened?
Well, it's during the day. My wife had stayed home from work that day. I guess because she did anticipate that it was going to be delivered that day and she wanted to be home. So I was there with her and my daughter. My daughter was only 1 year old at the time, like one and a half or so. Well, almost two, going to be turning two in April. I do remember she wasn't quite two yet. And I got a knock on the door and I didn't know what was going on. It didn't make any sense to me. And kind of in a fumbling manner, kind of confused by what I had in my hands. I turned to my wife and I said, "What is this? Why did you do this? I don't understand I just didn't understand what was happening." Um, she told me a couple things that I found a little bit shocking. One, for years I had gone to her family and told them about the abuse and asked them to intervene. And I had gotten to the point where I was so desperate for the abuse to stop that I told her, "If you don't stop this abuse, I'm going to tell your work." Now, I had said that before, but I didn't really realize how seriously she took it this time. So when I asked her, why did you do this? She said, "Because you were going to tell my work. You forced me to lie." And those are her exact words. "You forced me to lie." And that she did it because I was going to tell her work. Now, I was a little stunned by that because she never took me seriously before about telling someone what was going on. But apparently that time she did. Um, and then she also did very much feel she was justified in lying. Throughout our marriage, though, I was always responsible for her lying. That was always on me.
Well, and we know from what we do know about people with personality disorders or their traits, one of their greatest fears is exposure, is for their behavior to be exposed. So uh, her very defensive reaction to that would be consistent with that kind of view on things. So what happened at that moment? Were you ordered off of the premises at that moment? Or
Well, I read on the document that I had 30 minutes to vacate. That's what I read. The person who gave me the didn't actually gave me the document didn't really even say anything to me that I remember. Yeah.
okay, and so what comes next? I take it you vacate the premises at that point?
Right. And I'm disabled. I'm in shock. I don't know what's going on. I have 30 minutes to get out. So I forget my IDs. I forget a lot of stuff because like who who can, even if you're just a normal person, vacate a home in 30 minutes? You
Right.
just can't. So I forgot a lot of stuff. So then later I within a couple hours I went back and picked up my ID. She wasn't there, but I went back into the home and I picked up my ID and got what I forgot. And then I called her because we had been doing a renovation on her home, entire home remodel inside. So she had rung up all my credit cards to the max. I was tapped out. I had more debt on my credit cards than I had income for an entire year from my disability. And then about 6 months into the marriage, she had stolen $53,000 from me, all that I had for my entire life.
Right.
Um, so I called her and I said, I need some money for a hotel. I don't have any money. I need somewhere to sleep. That was a violation of the restraining order. This will pick up later in my story, but so I did have a public defender at the time where all these other charges came down on me. I already had a public defender at that point because I technically violated the restraining order by saying I need some money.
Okay, and what happens next? Are you arrested for that phone call?
Um, I think I was, but I think they released me almost immediately, if that's my recollection. I remember getting a call from the police. They said you need to come down to the station, which I did do. I've been through so much that everything's really hard to remember now. I don't nothing major came of it. I can tell you that much.
Okay.
Uh, yeah. The I don't know where you want me to pick up in what happened.
Well, what
Uh,
I'm interested in, and I think what my audience is going to be interested in, is going to be the series of legal events. We've covered the fact that you were in an abusive marriage, and that she has concocted reasons for you to be removed from the home, stolen your money, run up your credit cards. Um, but now the lawfare begins,
okay. So
and
then
so
I
I
go.
want to go with that.
All right.
What's next?
Then I go to family court. And in family court, I'm facing a restraining order. And this judge, the first judge I ever spoke to, was Gail O'Rain. She's was a family court judge, and I didn't know this at the time, but she's also the head of the Riverside Committee to Eliminate Bias and Promote Equal Justice. So she heads 32 people who are in this committee, 32 judges, uh, the committee that's supposed to regulate and make sure everyone has their civil rights in Riverside County. And every county in California has get that committee, I guess, by statute, I guess.
Yeah, I'm gonna share her image here. I want you to confirm that this is the woman that we're talking about.
Yeah, that's Gail O'Rain, yeah.
Okay. And so what does she do at this point? You sort of
Well,
described her position. What's her actions?
Well, I go in and I give her the 2 years of letters and emails that I had sent to my wife's parents and aunt, in which I tell them I'm being abused and really begging them to intervene. Uh, I want to be as fair as possible on this. I didn't have the earlier letters. In the earlier letters, I went to them quite cordially and said, look, I need help. My emphasis really wasn't on how bad the abuse was, but just I'm being abused. I'm not telling you the details, but I really need your help. The later letters, I'm starting to become angry at her family for not helping me. And those are the only letters I had. But her parents on the stand did admit to getting letters for 2 years. They just did not admit to actually reading them, which is kind of a silly thing because any parent who got any letter from a spouse that involved their daughter in abuse would obviously at least talk to their daughter or at least read the letters, but they claimed never to have. I'd also gave the judge two written apologies from my wife where she apologized for abusing me and promised to stop. My wife had apologized hundreds of times, telling me she was going to stop abusing me. Uh, and then she would immediately start it again. It was relentless. So I got to points in that where I would tell her, look, I don't believe you anymore. You keep apologizing. You keep saying this is going to stop. Put it in writing and maybe I'll believe you. Eventually she did put it in writing and she did that twice. And for a very short time, she did stop after writing those apologies, but it did start up again. I then brought her parents and aunt in to testify, and they testified in family court that uh, their daughter and niece never said she was abused. and that there were no signs of abuse. So this is coming from her own family. Anyway, it ends with my wife being given sole custody of my daughter to my wife and me granted no visitation.
Did
Now,
this judge give you a rationale for that kind of decision?
I never know what's going on in family court because the judges never explain themselves, and I never get any documentation that clearly lays out what has happened or what's going to happen. The thing in family court, they don't even view men as kind of people worth telling anything about what's going on. We're not human beings to them. So they don't feel any need to communicate anything to me. And other men there too, because I watch these courts. Not to say women don't sometimes get the wrong verdicts for them, but the prejudice against men is so intense, we're not even really considered people.
Anybody who's ever read any of Stephen Baskerville's work knows this to be the case. You're basically herded through family courts like cattle and treated like cattle in the process. So, all right, she takes your right to see your child after
Right. So now
you present her with confessions of being abused by your wife. She gives the wife custody and removes your access completely.
right. And here's what the funny thing is. I questioned my wife on the stand in family court, and at no point did my wife say that the apologies were coerced. It was never asserted by her nor her attorney. But when after this verdict, I was frustrated. Says, how can you ignore this? The judge came up with it on her own. My wife's attorney or my wife presented this, saying that my wife was coerced into writing those apologies. And even on the stand, my wife admitted that one apology took 3 weeks for her to write, and another took 4 weeks from when I asked for it. And never said anything about being coerced. I was simply at that point like, I don't believe you. If you want to put it in writing, put it in writing. You can't make someone stop abuse by forcing them to stop abuse. And I realized that. So I never did more than just ask. And my wife has never asserted that I did more than ask.
So this judge, and I want to show her picture again. Let me get this up. Because the thought that came to my mind was like with judges like this, who needs an opposing attorney?
Yeah,
Uh,
there is. Yeah, that's true. That's very much true.
so she was basically acting as counsel for your wife and totally tossing out the evidence that was in front of her and fabricating a theory of your wife being harassed or under duress in order to make these statements when there was no testimony as such. Is that
That's right. Yeah,
okay?
it was totally out of nowhere. So of course I am just you're talking about a man who's disabled, who's in pain. I'm in pain all the time. I've just been through the most horrible abuse probably anyone could ever go through. So I'm mad. I went from being hurt to mad. I don't know what the stages are, but I went to where I was furious. So I took a sign with her name and wrote Gail Lorraine gave my daughter to my abuser, put that on a sign and sat in front of the family courthouse for about 10 weeks. I was so mad. My daughter's now in my abuser's hands, and I'm worried for my daughter because I never know what my wife is going to do. I don't know what her limits are.
Does she
Uh,
have a history while you were with her of being abusive with your daughter?
no,
Okay.
uh, but she was like short with. She seemed to not really understand she was a child and didn't understand a lot of things. That's It was more of that lack of understanding of the child is like doesn't really know a lot. So she seemed to hold my daughter to a higher standard than would be make any sense for a child that young. But no abuse. And I still, to this day, I don't think my daughter has been abused. Although at the time I was worried, very worried, because I never knew. My wife would always take things farther and farther, so I never really knew what to expect from her.
Well, and frequently with abusers, if you take away whoever it is they're kicking, they find somebody else to substitute, and that does happen with children.
Yeah, I don't think it's happening in this
Okay.
case. So anyway, I protest for 10 weeks, and then I'm supposed to go for my misdemeanor violation of the restraining order. I'm supposed to go to court, and I get a call the day before from my defense attorney, and she says that, and this is her words, the DA is furious that you protested a judge. You're going to jail. I can't tell you what the charges will be, but you're definitely going to jail. So, and so it was obviously in retaliation. For 10 weeks, if someone's really an abuser, you're going to want to get them in jail right away. So the idea that this would happen only after 10 weeks of protesting a judge, something funny has gone on. Either Gail O'Rain turned the charges over knowing I was the victim, or the DA was just so mad that I protested a judge, or some combination of the two.
Well, and to help people orient and sort of understand the big picture here, these are colleagues, family court judges, district attorneys, even the lawyers, the divorce lawyers, family law attorneys that come into the courts. All of these are part of a kind of social group and back each other. So let me make sure I get this right. That after 10 weeks of protesting the judge, they go after you for the violation of the restraining order? That
Oh,
was
no, it's way worse than that.
okay.
No, after 10 weeks, they were now going to charge me with felonies, and I didn't know what the felonies would be. I later learned the felonies are domestic violence and terrorist threats. Two charges that were completely fabricated out of nowhere. Yeah.
Okay,
So,
so what happens? They arrest you?
yeah, so I go to court, I get arrested. My bail is $555,000. Now, to give you some idea, on the domestic violence charges, one, they knew I was the victim. All the evidence showed I was the victim. There was nothing in her case at all. There are no police reports. Cops had never been to my home regarding domestic violence perpetrated by me. There was just nothing there. Now, at one point, and this came later on, later she did claim, oh no, it was earlier. In family court, she did claim I punched her in the arm. That was the total extent of what she claimed. The problem with that is she gave the judge a photograph. And I looked at the metadata on the photograph, and it's 2 weeks prior to when she claimed I punched her. She has a picture of a bruise on her arm. So that never came out in trial because you're not going to present evidence. Because I already said that in family court. I go, this doesn't make sense because this is 2 weeks before she's saying it's going to happen. How does this picture exist? And so they never brought that up in trial. When we actually went to trial, there was really no testimony other than an expert witness. I'll get into that down the road, actually. That's so far down the road in our
I want to
discussion.
interrupt you just a second here. What is the name of the prosecutor?
The prosecuting attorney at the trial, and I think this may have changed during the course of it, but during the trial, the prosecuting attorney was Brian Nguyen Ferguson. So Brian is his first name, Nguyen, N-Y-U-G-E-N, I think. Ferguson was the actual name of the prosecuting attorney.
Was that one of the images that you sent me?
No.
Okay, so we don't have an image of him. Too bad.
No.
That's okay.
I don't think an image exists because I looked exhaustively on the internet. He's an Asian guy. Yeah.
So the name is Brian Wynn, though. That's N-G-Y-U.
Well, it goes by Brian Ferguson.
Okay.
It actually goes by Ferguson. It just happens. I did find his license and noticed. And I always thought Ferguson was a little bit of a weird name for an Asian guy, but then I figured out that there was, yeah.
All right, so you get arrested and you've got a $500,000 bond
Yeah.
for a domestic violence case, which is just mind blowing on its
Well,
own.
especially when there's not any evidence at all. And in fact, when all the evidence says you're the victim, it's mind blowing. Yeah.
Well, even
It's
even if there
funny.
was evidence, a $500,000 bond is just.
Oh, that's like a murderer
My
who went.
first thought is, how many people did you kill?
Yeah, I know. What's funny is just to understand how corrupt this Riverside system is. That same initial period I was in jail, two different sheriff's deputies were charged with statutory rape, uh, and both of them had like either $20,000 or $40,000 bail. So it's the political. I was made a political prisoner. When you put someone in for $500,000 who's the victim of crime, that's a political prisoner at that point.
Yeah,
And then
so
people,
we're going to go ahead and be honest here. You were jailed for exercising your right to free speech by a
yeah,
judge who didn't like to be criticized and who
right.
had a friend in the prosecutor's office. Okay. Um, so now you're in jail for how long?
The initial period I was in jail for was about 350 days, the first complete length of time. Now, while in jail, I was screaming bloody murder. I want my speedy trial. I did that from like day one. I go, I know there's nothing here. Let's go to trial. I want trial right now. Well, after 60 days, they rearranged me, which they can do. And I was rearranged after 60 days. Now, technically, I think, and I'm not an attorney, when you do that, that's considered one mistrial. And you get like two mistrials before they just can't prosecute you anymore. Although I'm not an attorney, I don't know if what I just said is true, but that's my
Okay.
understanding from what I read.
And I don't know either, to put all the cards on the table, but go
All right.
ahead.
So after 60 days, they rearranged me. And then our 60, this is all before COVID, mind you. Then another 60 days comes by. I've never talked to an attorney yet. I went the whole first year, no attorney would have a conversation with me. Okay. In fact, it took me 3 years before I actually sat down with a public defender to discuss my case. 3 years. Okay. So the first year, I had no real representation. They appointed an attorney, but I couldn't talk to him. So this attorney who I've never spoken to has me declared incompetent. And I'm like, incompetent? You never talked to me. How do you know I'm incompetent? So anyway, I'm declared incompetent. I try to say something, but they just rush me out of the courtroom. I go to incompetency court. Two court psychiatrists talk to me over the next couple months. I'm waiting. Both of them say, no, this man's not incompetent. He's perfectly competent to be in regular court, which is obvious to anyone who knows me or would ever have spoken to me. I go back to court, got a new attorney now. That attorney declares me incompetent again. And I speak up this time in court. Yeah, I'm in chains, but I speak up. I go, hold on. You just declared me incompetent once. I was found to be competent by two psychiatrists. You just can't do this again. You can't. I don't know how you can say someone's incompetent who's already been ruled competent. Judge doesn't care, sends me back to incompetency court again, where again, two
Is
other
this the same judge we're talking about?
different judge. Everything's always changing here. It's always, well, it could have been the same judge. Just really don't remember. But again, it's all done because public defender doesn't want to prepare for trial. They want to keep you in jail so long that you're actually there longer than your sentence would be. So then you could plead guilty. And if you plead guilty, no one ever has to look into the fact that there was never any evidence at all. And that's kind of the whole system in Riverside. In Riverside County, 89% of all cases, are plea deals. That's really high because even in the state of California, which is a very high plea rate, because for most crimes that are very lenient, it's only 75%. And for the rest of the nation, it's lower than that. But you have a county in which 89% of the time people plead guilty. And that happens primarily because you really don't get any representation when you have a public defender in California, or at least in Riverside County. Um, yeah.
Yeah, they're hacks in most places, unfortunately. So take us to the next step.
Okay, so I'm in jail. They're not reducing my bail. They're just keeping me in there. Eventually, they reduce my bail and I get out. Couple more years.
After how long?
After 350 days, I get
Okay.
out. Approximately 350. I'm still screaming for a speedy trial and keep getting assigned different attorneys who won't take my case to trial, won't even speak with me. So now I'm in the process of going to 8 different Marsden hearings. A Marsden hearing is where you go in and say, it's not working out with my public defender. They're not doing any work. I need a new public defender. That's basically a Marsden hearing. So I go in there and I can't get any of these attorneys to meet with me. I can't get the Marsden judge to get rid of these attorneys. There was one attorney in particular, Reno Cervantes, appointed attorney. He brings me plea deals without ever having talked to me. I go, I'm not talking about a plea deal. You don't know anything about my case. You've never spoken to me, and you march up to me and say, here's a plea deal. I'm like, I'm not guilty. You've not even talked to me. How are you presenting a plea? And his position was that if I'm charged, I'm guilty. So in a Marsden hearing, I told the judge, look, he has told me, my own defense attorney has told me that if I'm charged, I'm guilty. And the judge tells me, the Marsden hearing judge tells me, he's right. If you're charged, you're probably guilty. So it's like, and then the Marsden judge goes on to tell me, I have no right to speak to my attorney before trial. So that's kind of how Marsden hearings work in Riverside County.
Okay. And so what happens next, William?
Okay, so eventually, after 4 years of me screaming, giving me my speedy trial, I get a trial, and they hold me in jail during the time of the trial. To back up a little bit here, I have a disability that requires some very expensive medication. I get infusions now 3 times a week. You can also give that infusion once every 3 weeks in a super large dose. That's another option for my treatment. But I go to jail, and during the course of my time in jail, I made 97 medical grievances in which I tell the jail I have this disease and they're refusing treatment of me. Now, the jail was previously sued, and the result of the loss for not giving people health care in jail, and that part of the decision or the agreement that was made was that from now on, after 3 grievances for not getting medical treatment, you're supposed to be able to talk to the jail commander. Well, I did that 97 times and I was never allowed to talk to the jail commander. In fact, when I was in jail, the jail doctors initially refused to give me my treatment, but then I said, then send me to a specialist. And the jail doctor promised me, if the specialist says you need this treatment, I will give it to you. I go to the specialist did prescribe it. I get an appointment to go to the hospital to get the infusions, and then I get a call and I'm told, no, it's been canceled. The jail doctor actually canceled what the specialist said the treatment had to be. Now, with this disease, it's very difficult for me to walk if I don't get my treatment. It also feels like I'm being burned and electrocuted alive. The pain is absolutely mind numbing. I cannot express to someone how no one can possibly understand unless I freaking threw gasoline on you and burnt you alive and electrocuted you at the same time. then you might have some idea of what I'm dealing with. Okay, my disease is horrific. Okay, especially without the medication. So anyway, during the additional days, 60 some days I was in jail awaiting trial, I'm also not getting treatment. And I went to that trial judge. Um, his name is John Malloy. He was my trial judge.
Is he in the images that you sent?
No, I initially wasn't going to bring up the name because my case, I was acquitted of the domestic violence, but I was convicted of the terrorist threats, and my case is up to appeal to the California Supreme Court. So I initially thought I wouldn't bring his name up. I don't think it's a problem I do, but just to be safe. The problem is I know I'm going to die soon. So who cares at this point? So I might as well just say who the judge was. Anyway, he was told 4 times by my attorney, he requires this treatment. It's been approved by a specialist and he's not getting it. The judge refused to do anything about it. So I go through the whole trial being tortured, and I got to be wheeled into court in a wheelchair. And they got to put me up on the, I'm supposed to hide my disability in court. So the trial judge is hiding my disability. So when I testify, I have to already be on the stand before they bring the jury into the room.
Wow.
And then the jury has to leave before I come off. There's a whole lot of stuff that was wrong with that trial. No evidence was allowed to be presented. You had an expert testify who I'd never talked to. And what's funny is would say all these things happen in domestic violence cases, which my wife never claimed happened. The experts just saying, well, if this happens, then this happens in the domestic violence case, then this happens, then this happens. And it's just meant to like create an impression all this happened, even though my wife never claims any of that stuff in her testimony. I forget where exactly I was. Some of this stuff can be a little bit too much.
No, I know it's a complicated story. Don't worry about that. I want to get to the point that you're done with the trial and what happens next.
Well, I'm in the trial, done with the trial, eventually goes to appeal. I get convicted, acquitted of the domestic violence. All 12 jurors acquitted of domestic violence. The terrorist threat, well, there was no evidence allowed. They weren't allowed to put the letters in where my wife apologized for abusing, or that I wrote to her parents, or the apologies for abuse. Her parents didn't testify. We weren't allowed to bring them in to say that nothing happened or that they didn't see anything happen. None of that was allowed.
Was the conviction on the terrorist threat? I'm a little confused here. Was that related to the phone call you made?
No, okay. That's related to about a year into the abuse. Well, not a year, but more than a year into the abuse, I had become bedridden for about a year. And while I was bedridden for a year, I was one day playing with my daughter on the floor. She was less than 2 years old, playing with, or actually, it might have been less than 1. She was very young. I'm sitting on the floor or lying on the floor playing with her, and my wife just comes in the room before work and out of nowhere just starts kicking the living hell out of me, which shocked me. I didn't know what was happening. She said nothing before she did it. So I ran out of the room, and then she locks the door, and I lean in. Before I knew it was locked, I leaned in the door to break it open. I put a hole in the door. And then I just stop and walk away, realizing I was mad for a second. I just broke the door and I just walk away. She goes to work and I'm just reliving what just happened to me after a year of just the most horrible abuse. I'm reliving that in my mind and I tell her, you just kicked the hell out of me. The abuse has to stop or I'm going to kill you. Okay. That's the terrorist threats.
Okay.
She does continue abusing me for another year. And then she gets
somehow yet you managed not to kill her.
Right. See, this is the thing with the terrorist threats, and this is what my attorney didn't do, even though I instructed him to do it. There's 5 elements to a terrorist threats charge. Okay. The first one is it has to be made knowingly and with intent. Like I really had to believe, I had to really mean I was going to kill her. It has to be specific, meaning you have to say, I'm going to kill you by strangling you, I'm going to shoot you. There was nothing in there that was specific. It has to be unconditional. That's one of the other elements.
And let's explain that. When you said, if you don't stop the abuse, I'm going to kill you, that's the condition, which should make
Right.
it exempt from that charge.
Right. It has to be immediate, and this was by text while she was at work, so it can't be immediate. And then the last thing that has to be there is the person has to actually be in fear themselves, which obviously wasn't the case because she abused me for the next year. Yeah.
And yet none of this made its way to the ears of a jury.
No, I think my attorney, the one, I think my attorney just felt, and I didn't, that his primary concern was the uncle convicted of DV. I think what he was trying to do, and I disagreed with him on this, was do a trade-off. Okay, you convict him on the terrorist threats, but you let him go on the DV. I think that's a strategy which I did not concur with because I knew on both counts there was just nothing there. But that was the strategy he took. Another thing that really hurt was the very last person who testified was a police officer. And this police officer claims I told him that I owned a gun and that I had it hidden from him and that they were never going to find it. The primary mistake that police officer made was he named the gun. I used to, at one point in my life, the only gun I ever owned was a Mossberg 500 shotgun. Big gun. This is a self-defense gun. If for anyone who knows anything about guns, okay, self-defense, you want to like scare someone away. You want to make sure you can shoot them because you've never really shot a gun before. You do a shotgun. So anyway, he mentions the gun and says, I claim that I had this gun. This is the problem though. 2 years prior to this, I had turned in that shotgun to the Huntington Beach Police Department and gotten a receipt saying I turned in the gun and it was destroyed. So what apparently he did is after talking to me, he went to the gun registry for California, saw I owned a shotgun. Apparently the gun registry never recorded that it was destroyed. So he comes to court and goes, I got him. I'm going to tell him that he's mentioned this gun and he was threatening his wife. Or he was making a threat, not threatening his wife, but making a threat. He turned to me, and when he said it, he had this biggest smile you can imagine on his face, like, I got you, and there's nothing you can do about it. Well, I literally half jumped out of my seat. I'm like, whoa, what are you saying here? I later bring to court the receipt from the Huntington Beach Police Department says this gun was destroyed 2 years earlier. The judge is going on vacation, so he refuses to call back the jury and give them this information, saying it doesn't matter, it's not going to affect the case. So that's one of the reasons for my appeal to this is now going to be before the, hopefully the Supreme Court will take it. Will be going before the California
And
Supreme.
which judge was this? Who was this
This was
judge?
Judge John Malloy. John Molloy. I'll try to dig up a picture. I've never really tried to find a picture of him, but I'll try.
Okay.
Yeah.
And okay, so you're in a very Orwellian trial here. What happens next?
Oh, I'm convicted. It goes to appeal. They let me out of jail immediately because for the terrorist threats, I'm sentenced to 364 days, and I've already spent 444 days in jail. So it was just immediately released.
And did you ever, during that 444 days, get the infusion treatments that are,
No, I never did. I never got the infusions. It was to be not only a political prisoner, but then to be tortured. And this is what's so mind-boggling. Realize I had just gone through the most horrible abuse a disabled person could ever possibly imagine. And now the system, which is taking hold of me, is abusing me further. Because I got to tell you, going without my medication was at least as bad as the abuse I went through. Um, I have really serious mental health issues now. I have the PTSD I have is extreme. Um, so I try not to think too deeply about these things anymore. Like I can go months and months and months not thinking about what happened to me at all because I know the dangers I face of actually thinking about the exact incidents can really cause horrible problems for me. Um, so yeah, that's kind of my mental health is broken. I'm a broken man. I am.
so what now? We're past, you're out of jail. The conviction for the terroristic threat is on appeal. The charges for domestic violence are dropped. You were able to prove they were lying about the gun, but of
Oh, okay.
course it
Well,
didn't matter.
okay. So now I've been mailing for a long time the committee to eliminate bias and promote equal justice, which my family court judge just happens to be in
That's
charge
one
of.
of the most ironic things I think I've ever heard in my life.
There's a lot of judges in Riverside County. The odds are like 400 to 1. Like, because we're a big county of that actually happening, but that's what happened. So I'm sending letters. I have sent more than a dozen letters to that committee. I don't even get a reply. And they have specifically where to send it. Send your complaints here. They don't even, and to this day, and I've been doing this for years, they don't even reply. So eventually I saw a video where they announced the committee when I guess it first started or sometime during its existence. And they had this little video where 7 judges do appear and they give their names. And I find those judges' names who are on the committee and I mail all those saying, I've tried to submit this to the executive office, to Gail O'Rain, to the committee that's supposed to do this. No one's paying attention. I know you're one of the people on the committee. Please intervene. Not one of them writes me back of the 7. Then I got through, I had to fill out a form. I don't know if it's a Freedom of Information Act or whatever it was. I eventually filled out some form I gave to the court, and they gave me the names of all 32 people who are on the committee or oversee the committee. All 32 people are involved in some way of the committee. And I find their addresses for 30 of the 32, and I mail all of them and ask them, please intervene. I've done this, I've done this, I've done this. This is what's going on. I want to appear before the committee. I'm on a hunger strike. I'm willing to die if you don't let me be on the committee. But apparently all 30 members would rather have me die than ever allow a man to appear before their committee. So I guess men aren't really enough of a people to be considered people. I don't know to actually like men, especially, and there's particular, I think it's even stronger with white men. We're the oppressors. So it's kind of like, why would they need civil rights, or how would they possibly have a civil rights complaint? So it's not even in their kind of scope of how they see the world where any kind of discrimination can be had by me.
Well, it's almost like for the committee that they're not actually doing what they claim to be all about. Certainly that was true in your case. So what is, you've made these appeals, you're 70 plus days into a hunger strike, your health is deteriorating. What now?
Honestly, I've gone through this whole week. just going and sitting in front of the courthouse with my sign. And by the time I'm done, I'm so exhausted that I don't think at all. I will tell you, I woke up this morning and I started to think about it. And I don't know, because the honest truth is, I don't think anyone's ever going to help me. And I don't know if I can continue to go on. I've actually put a thought in my own head today. I've been thinking maybe I just stop drinking the water too and let myself die. Um, because I don't know that anyone cares.
I got to point out one of the first comments on my channel when we posted the first part of this discussion was with a man pleading to you to change course.
Right.
Um,
I comment too.
uh,
This is my thoughts on that. I think that person needs to
yeah,
understand.
help him understand or help anybody, because there's going to be people sitting here saying, wait a minute, nobody's going to help you and your death. I mean, most of us in this community remember the suicide of Earl Silverman in Canada. It didn't change a thing, of course. And so, I mean, I think this is an honest question to ask you. Uh,
Right. It's very
what purpose is your death going to serve?
well. This is kind of what you have to understand about my situation.
Okay.
I've been in a horrible place for 10 years between the abuse and what I've been through. And I've been having less and less hope, of ever being in my daughter's life. So what happens is you're in this very bad place and it's not getting better. It's in fact getting worse. And I came to the realization that if this continues, it ends one way. And we all know what that way is. My hunger strike was taken on to prevent myself from committing suicide. By doing the hunger strike, I reinvigorated the little tiny, tiny, tiny bit of hope I had left. So the hunger strike, if without the hunger strike, I'd probably already be dead because I would have had not any hope left. So the hunger strike was my last chance to hold on by my fingernails to hope. As no one is helping me, I got the last fingernail holding on to the ledge. I don't know how much longer I can really hold on to the ledge.
For better or worse, folks, that's his answer. This is his chosen path. It's tragic. You know, it's been said, and quite rightly, that the American family court system is literally the biggest rollback of civil rights since Jim Crow. This stuff about judges ignoring evidence, not allowing evidence in, keeping it from the jury. This is routine for family courts. These people operate with impunity. And it's why, despite years of valiant efforts on William Seremak's part, their response is to shrug their shoulders and call next. It's a horrible, horrible system. I'm very sorry that you got caught up in it the way you did by an abusive woman. Um, I want to ask you one last thing. At some point, if you continue on this path, you will pass away from it. That'll happen. But this interview and other information about your life and what happened will remain online. We know that the internet is forever in that sense. Is there anything you would like to say to your daughter that you would
Yeah.
want her to hear?
Over the years, I have made quite a few videos for her. And on YouTube, you can set them to be released at a certain time. So I have a whole bunch of videos for her, depending on her age and what I should be talking to her about at that age, that will appear on YouTube if I'm no longer around. So I have left many messages to her. I posted actually a couple of them. on my X account, which is Dem War on Men, where I do talk to her, and you can get some idea of what I would tell her. So yeah, if you go to Dem War on Men on X, you can see a couple of those videos, which I've posted already.
Just
I'll
like the
probably,
last one, that'll be linked in the description area here. I'm trying to make an appeal. If you guys are on Twitter, give this guy some support. All you got to do is a couple of clicks to follow him, and that will at least offer some measure of support and give you a way to contact William and to communicate with him if you're so inclined. Please check it out in the description area and visit him on X. Do you have
that's
a,
kind
go ahead.
well, that's kind of been one thing that's really hurt me a lot in this last week is I went on and saw the video you posted already about 14 hours after you posted it. And at that point, it had about 400 people who had viewed it. And I did make an appeal at the end that there's a little thing people can do for me is follow me on my X account because I really want to get the local paper involved. And they're not going to do that unless they see people actually have interest in the story. And what really hurt, and it's really hurting me a lot right now, more than anything else I've been through, is these are 400 people that care enough about this issue to at least watch a video, at least a few minutes of a video. And if the people who are in a similar situation who are concerned about this issue, only 4 of them, because that's how many additional followers I got during that time, only 4 out of 400 would take the minimal effort to do that, I really fear that men really have no chance in this country because even the people involved in the movement aren't really motivated to do anything.
Well, I can tell you as a longtime advocate for men that there's nothing untrue about what you're saying, and it is a sad reality. Our society is a misandric one that includes men every bit as much as it does women. Um, when guys are going through struggles and facing difficulties, they're more likely to see other people's backs by far than they are their faces. And it's a sad reality. I've lived with this for the nearly 20 years that I've been out here screaming into the wilderness. Don't get me wrong, I've stumbled on lots of good supportive people, but the vast majority of men still just want to be entertained and they live in the delusion that it could never happen to them. And as long as they avoid the cold, real truth, they feel safe. And it's hard to find a way around that. I want to, you know, it is a, a, a very sort of fuzzy line to cross. William, I hope you consider finding a reason to live. Just my 2 cents. Uh, I certainly wouldn't try to steer you away from your principles and your values, and I think you are acting on them. I just wish that there was a better way for you, because most of the people out there, you're right, they'll just shrug and move on.
Yeah, I do wish there was. I'm a person who always looks for solutions, and I've really explored this very, very length for a very long time in my mind. The problem we have here, uh, men don't have any avenue in the courts. But then there's all these other things that are supposed to be out there, like this committee, but you don't have any avenue. There is no avenue other than the hunger strike. I'm not going to go out and like harm people because I'm mad at them for what these judges does. That's just not me. So there is no avenue for men. We don't have any avenue. The system is not set up in any way to pay any attention at all.
Well, it's set up to exploit and abuse you. That's the way it's set up. It's not that there's indifference, there's absolute malice involved here. A judge that sees exculpatory evidence and then figures out how not to let the jury sees it, that's not indifference or incompetence. That's malice.
Oh, I'll
And
tell you, I gotta get this in. This is just hilarious. So I'm a disabled man. The judge in my case is in a wheelchair and he's hiding my disability. I mean, you cannot get more crazy than that.
well, he didn't want a jury having any sympathy for you.
No, we tried to get my neurologist to testify just how bad my disease. We wouldn't allow the neurologist to testify. So it's like it's amazing that someone in a wheelchair. I don't even know what to say. I don't even know. I have no way of, I don't know.
It is completely ironic and for some strange reason unsurprising. That's how the system is set up. William, is there anything else you'd like to add before we close this up?
No, this kind of started for me as kind of an indictment of the judicial system, especially the family court system, but really both the criminal and family court system. But after this 1 week of finally getting my story out there, I think you're going to look back on this in the months to come if I do pass away, and it's going to become more an indictment of the men's rights movement. It appears to me from an outsider, and I don't know many people in the movement, that it is led by people who are feckless. These are the people who I'm a conservative, and I don't think that matters that much, but I'm a conservative, and my whole life I've watched, and I don't mean this on you, but the boomer
No, no,
generation.
let it rip, man.
The boomer generation seems to be two types of boomers. You have the liberal, and because they're running the show right now. You have the liberal boomers who it's all about narcissism and virtue signaling. That's all the liberal boomers do. But then the conservative boomers, my whole life, conservative boomers have just been feckless. That's why so many of them don't like what Trump does, because Trump is actually getting things done. I've heard my whole life, I've watched these politicians say we need to cut taxes, we need to cut spending. They would just spend just as much as the liberals would. So they would never fight. And it seems like boomers have no fight in them for what's. I got to make this perfectly clear. The men's rights movement seems to want to win the war without ever fighting a battle. And that's never going to work. My story is so extreme that this is the hill you want to die on. But the problem is the leadership in the men's rights community is so feckless that they think they're going to just win this war without ever fighting that battle. And it's never going to work. It's going to be a failure.
I totally understand why you feel that way. I do want to push back gently on one idea. There is no men's rights leadership.
True.
We've got a bunch of conservative traditionalists out there who are pushing the notion of men getting on their knees before women and surrendering their lives to the care and uptake of women and keeping their mouths shut when family court bends them over. These guys have nothing to do with men's rights. Nothing. They don't believe in it. They're not pushing for it. They're not working for it. Society, I would argue, is not ready for men to be valued. It's just not ready. The moment you try to assert for men to be valued or protected in any way or giving legal protections from the kind of abuse that you suffered, the lawfare that you suffered, the entire society, left, right, conservative, liberal, far left, everybody doesn't want to hear it. And that's what an uphill battle that the men's rights initiative is. But these guys, the the Jordan Petersons of the world and others of his ilk, you never hear them talk about your experience. You will never hear them utter a word.
What's so surprising about this is it's so obvious in the family courts, and this is a winning issue. What I don't understand is a winning issue is it's best for a child to have two parents. That's a winning issue. If you ask 90% of Americans, is a two-parent family best, or is it best for a child to have two parents in their lives? This is a 90-10 issue. Why aren't we fighting? Why?
Because there's a more powerful issue, which is if mama ain't happy, nobody's happy.
Yeah.
We are such a gynocentric culture that our 90-10 issue, like a child needs both parents and needs regular exposure to the father, the moment that runs up against the sensibilities of a female, it's abandoned completely and totally. This society is on its knees before women. And it's why this stuff is always going to dead end. I mean, someday that may change, but right now, we live in a society of male slaves. We call them simps. We make fun of them. There's a lot of discussion about this in the red pill community. But the truth is, it's not really just a category of men called simps or traditionalists or tradcons. It is men itself as a category will not go to battle with women. They will not embrace any principles or
What
operate by any values that offends the sensibilities of the average woman. And the average woman wants it all. That's what we're dealing with.
Yeah. Well, what I think, this is what I've noticed. Like, women will back other women, even though they know the other woman's lying. They
Yes,
always know. They will.
so
But
will the men.
here's the problem. Men could see another man telling the truth. They won't back a man who's actually telling the truth. So it's like women get women who lie, people always help them. But men who tell the truth, men don't do anything about it.
That's the point that I make. And the reason they don't do anything about it is because it angers women and they fear women's rejection. This is about, we have become, and I don't think it's generational. I think the silent generation were the ones that actually let feminists gain power. Boomers supported it and encouraged it with hippie bullshit. And every generation since then has kissed the ring of feminism. It's all of us. And it's a shame. And it results in stories like this, which absolutely rip my guts out. But
But
it's
here's the thing,
happening all the time.
forget about me for a moment. Forget about me entirely. This is going to destroy my daughter. She's going to grow up not knowing what a good man is. Maybe she's going to now have bad relationships with men. Maybe she's not going to appreciate what a man brings to a family. So she's going to be a single mom. And then it just gets worse and worse and worse. Forget about it. Even if you don't care at all about men at all, it just does not, you don't care. Fuck men, I don't care. Okay. Think about the kids at least. At
They
least do
don't
that
matter.
much.
They don't matter when it comes up against women's sensibilities. Family courts have been destroying children for decades now, literally destroying them, ripping parents out of their lives, issuing ex parte restraining orders that separate them from their fathers. Children grow up, we know that the children who don't have enough father exposure end up more truant, more drug addicted, more teen pregnancies, everything you can possibly imagine, every psychosocial factor by which we measure the lives of children deteriorates when fathers are removed. We don't slow down. We rip them out left and right. Why? Because when mama ain't happy, nobody's happy. And
Yeah.
that's
So
the truth.
I'm just going to endure as long as I can. Um, that's what I'm going to do. And I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what to say. Uh, this is my last hope. I'll hold on to it, I guess, as long as I can. Although this morning I was thinking about just stop drinking altogether and give up. I guess I'll probably still try to continue, but I don't know. I don't know what else to say.
Well, I want you to stay in touch, William. Whatever develops in your case, I want to follow it and at least let my modest audience know about it and try to reach as, this is all we can do. We make some noise. We anticipate that the world's going to ignore it, but we make it anyway, because even if I can't get justice, I do want to be a thorn in their sides to whatever degree that I can. Folks, been talking with William Seremak. That's our time for today. William, thank you for doing this. Again, sincere condolences for all this horrible insanity that has visited your life. Folks, we'll see you next time.